Hello, welcome back everyone. I hope you guys have an amazing lunch and come back energized to participate more on our discussion. So without wasting time, let's invite our next speaker, Miss Wendy Sia. A brief introduction to Miss Wendy. She is a writer and a researcher with an interest in indigenous arts and culture, particularly in topics such as indigenous knowledge, cosmologies, and eco-critical thoughts. Actually, in 2018, she started Garimis, a collaborative artistic and archiving collective that co-produce artworks and cultural content with indigenous Malaysian, which is orang asli, artists and artisan. Garimis advocates for the orang asli's customary territories and the return on these lands to their custodianship. So Wendy will present the discussion on a cosmology of care within orang asli's foodways. And let's give a warm round of applause to Miss Wendy, everyone.
Thank you, Vivi, for the introduction. Okay, let me just share my screen. Oh my God. Does everyone, is my screen viewable?
Yes.
It's the whole slide, right? Okay, it's not the presenter view. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Wendy. Thank you for having me here today and for joining this talk. So today I'll be talking about, so the title of my sharing is called A Cosmology of Care Within Orang Asli's Foodways. All right. Just a brief introduction of what I do along with my collective, Gurimis. In 2018, I started Gurimis with a friend. Essentially, what we do is documentation of Orang Asli's arts and culture with Orang Asli key community members and leaders. And the goal is not only to recognize, restore, and preserve their traditional knowledge and wisdom, but also the documentation that we do can be used as a tool for the Orang Asli to reclaim their spaces within the mainstream narrative or histories. And it's also to prove that basically because most of their knowledge languages are all oral traditions, and to have documentation is used as a it could be used to prove their existence in the past, present, and the future. And we are a collective, means we are a group, and we are neither an NGO or social enterprise, and we are made of people of various backgrounds. So over here, this is some of the places that we have done as a collective, the field work, and we have worked with, these are the few tribes that we work with. And the Temia tribe, Semai tribe, the Batik down south in Malaysia, the Seletar tribe, Temuan on the west side, so on and so forth. But today, for this sharing session, I will talk about 4 tribes, which are the Ma Mary in the Selangor, Temuan in Selangor, Temia in Kelantan, and the Semai in Perak. And this is an example of what we have done. We have published books, we have done exhibitions with the Orang Asli, done workshops, talks as well as a background. Yeah. So to set the context of my sharing session, what does it mean? What does the cosmology of care mean? And a bit about who the Orang Asli are, and also what is Foodways and how does this relate to folklores? Okay, a cosmology of care is something that is a work that we've been doing in the past, actually mostly this year, and essentially is to talk about how Orang Aslis, who are the indigenous people of Peninsular Malaysia, their belief system, their worldviews, and how they look at the world and how they treat the world, how they navigate themselves and position themselves in their land. It's all based around caring. So a lot of the things that they do is based on care, how they care for the rivers, how they care for the mountains, how they care in everything that they do on a daily basis, because they understand that they are not the only beings that are living on this in a specific area. So for example, if you see in this picture here, this is Basingin, who is my host father when I enter his village. The mountain that is before him and the river that you can see in the distance there. Even the hill paddy that he's sitting, it looks like grass, but it's actually paddy. All the trees, all the rocks, rivers, mountains, plants, they believe that there is a soul that resides in these plants. So therefore, because they understand that they are not the only beings on in the space, that they share a space with other things that cannot be seen. So therefore, everything that they do revolves around care. So it goes. So who are the Orang Asli? The Orang Asli are the indigenous peoples of West Malaysia, which is Peninsular Malaysia. They are a total of 19 tribes, and their way of life, spiritual beliefs, and cosmology are intimately tied to their lived environment. And therefore, because of that, they have a closeness to nature, ecologically and geographically niche surroundings. And when it comes to their culture and their identity, it's very closely tied to the forest. So they always say there is this I've heard this multiple times from them, where they say tiada hutan, tiada identity, adat seni dan budaya, which means that without forest there is no identity, there is no customs, there's no arts and culture. So this shows how they are very close to where they live. They have a history of trade, migration, resistance, and resilience. So what I mean by migration is that if we follow the flow of languages, either Austronesian, which is out of Taiwan, or Austroasiatic, which is from southern China, you can see how there is a shared language. If you listen to the many languages that Orang Asli have, and there is a connection with all the different languages that are around this region. And that in historically being in Peninsular Malaysia for a very long time, they have engaged in trading, providing forest harvest to traders that comes from either the west or the east into Peninsular Malaysia, and they were a very important part of the Malay kingdoms back then. So they have resisted outsiders by moving deeper inland, and they have been very resilient by maintaining their cultural identity amid dominant groups in Malaysia. So how does what is Foodways, and how does folklore play a role in Orang Asli Foodways? And how does it relate back to their cosmology of care? So Foodways actually encompass the process of preparing certain dishes, including recipes that are passed down from generation to generation, or their practices that are related to how they source food, how they grow food, and also the relationships of food practices that they have to their broader rituals and traditions, such as storytelling. So folklore or storytelling is a way for Orang Asli to transfer knowledge from one generation to another, because as I mentioned earlier, they don't have a written language, so they don't have a culture of writing down like, okay, this is how you do something and all that. So all of this knowledge is actually encompassed inside their folklores. So it's like a repository of their traditional ecological knowledge, which we will explore in the next few slides from the different tribes that I've worked with. And then how, because of how they look at food and how they grow their food, it revolves a lot on caring and also being very aware of how they do certain things that does not disturb or exploit the earth. Yeah. Okay, so we talk about the Semai people in Pahang, and the Semai are actually the biggest Orang Asli group in Peninsular Malaysia. So they are spread from the east to the west of the Titiwangsa mountain range, or the main range in the states of Perak and Pahang. So if you could see in this picture here, there is this whole mountain range, which is like, we call the Malaysia's backbone, and they live mainly in Perak and also in Pahang. So even though they are of the same tribe, they identify as the Semai, but their language is very different. If you go to the highlands, to upstream, downstream, even between Perak and Pahang, there's difference, like dialects in their language. Even within Perak itself, there is also difference from north to south of Perak. So this shows the amount of diversity that exists just within one tribe. And they have a tradition of planting hill paddy, which follow the cycle of seasons. So June, July, they would open up the lands, and then August they would do the dibling or manugal that you can see in this picture here, where they would plant paddy, and the seeds are heirloom seeds, which they have handed down from generation to generation. And then the monsoon season comes, and then harvest would be between February to March, and then between March to the time of opening the land, they would be eating the rice because they have harvested. And when they are waiting for the rice to grow, it's actually the fruit season. So you can see how they have managed to follow the cycle of seasons, the natural cycle of seasons, the wet and dry seasons, based on the fruit seasons as well, based on the monsoon season, so that they can ensure that they always have a steady flow of food source. Basically, is the way of how they do food security traditionally. And there is a story of how the seeds, basically the creation myth of paddy, of seeds. And I asked Bah, I think in the picture he's standing there. Wait, hang on. So he is standing, he's the one in gray shirt with the blue cap. He's a very strong figure within the community in the village. And I asked him, do you have a story of how paddy was given, like how was it created in your folklore? And he said that I'm gonna live translate from Malay, so it might take me a while. So he said from generation to generation, they have handed down the seeds. But how the seeds came about was that a long time ago, people didn't do planting. So they didn't berladang, which is they don't open up fields, they don't plant anything at all. They just eat fruits that they find in the forest, they hunted for animals, so on and so forth. So there wasn't rice at all. And then there is a very powerful ancestor that looked at them and said, like, I don't want you guys to eat aimlessly anymore. I want you guys to have a fixed cycle of like I mentioned earlier, how you plant rice, and then there's the fruit season, so on and so forth. So he created paddy, and then he gave the seeds to humans. At the same time, he also created the machete, which is the parang, and fire. And then he taught them how to plant paddy. And then from then on, they have managed to basically structure and arrange their lives around planting paddy, which is a very interesting story to me, because when he mentioned that the moyang, which is Baluich, as I've written down in the slides, created parang and api, which is machete and fire. These are all tools that they use in planting during their planting cycle. So, for example, the practice of opening up lands and then slash and burn, even of course we have a very skewed perspective on slash and burn, because we will say that it's polluting, it's open fire, so on and so forth. But they have a very strict practice with opening up lands. So for the Semai, it's actually guided by dreams and their shamans when they open up the lands. So they would choose an old fallow, which is like the old, it's like a field that they have left to grow. Like you can see background is all it's all bamboos in the background. So this is actually previously it was a paddy field which they have left for it to regenerate for many years before they come back and reopen the land again. So when they do that, they actually are very strict. If they open it and then they go back and they sleep that night, and if they have dreams of pangolins, like tenggiling, or elephants, gajah, snakes, it's actually, they take it as a good sign to continue opening the land, because they see these animals as spirit of the paddy, or semangat padi as they say, and therefore they cannot harm or kill the animal in the process of opening fields and fallows. There might be a scientific reason why animals such as pangolin, elephants, and snakes are sacred to the Semai, especially relating to paddy planting, is because pangolins, they actually ensure the health of the soil, by digging underground and having like aeration to the soil, same like elephants and snakes. But if they dream of fire, they see it as a bad sign and they will stop opening the land. And also they would actually ask the shaman or their tok hala to make sure that this land is okay to be open, because as I mentioned earlier, they believe that there are certain areas that there are souls that reside in the area. So it's guided by a very strict like customs or adat and pantang larang, and this is how they manage their resources. And they also have a specific ritual when they plant paddy, which they call it pesan ladang, which translates to like, pesan ladang is like, basically it's like asking for the ancestors for blessing when they open up the land. And they would use specific plants, as you can see in this picture. There's pineapple, there is sugarcane, and the rest are names of plants that are in Semai. So I'm not sure of the Malay or the English translation. And then if you can see in the bamboo here, there's actually like white water, which is powdered rice. And then during this ritual, it's like asking for the ancestor of paddy or semangat padi there to bless the land so that they will have a good harvest. And this is how they basically think about what comes before and what is coming after. So they pray to the ancestor, which they believe was the one that gave them the seeds. And then when they plant the rice, they are thinking of the next harvest. So it's a whole cycle that is that revolves a lot of carings, because they have to care when they open the land, they have to care when they plant the seeds, and then when they pray for a good harvest. These are all practices that surround requires a lot of care. And we go into talking about the Temuan people, and we will start seeing a pattern, how the Orang Asli, they have a very strong tradition in rice, and also how rice play a very significant role in their traditions. So who are the Temuans? So the Temuans are mostly they are mostly living in Selangor. They also live in Negeri Sembilan as well. And traditionally, they planted rice. They were also trading a lot with the Malays back then. And so in this picture here, this village is actually just 10 minutes from Kuala Lumpur International Airport. So they used to live in a peat swamp area, which is what is peat swamp in Malay? I don't remember, but a lot of their landscape has changed into oil palm, as you can see in this picture. So once upon a time, this grandma here in this picture, her name is Mak Yao. She used to plant paddy in this area. She used to shower in this river, but now it's impossible to do it because the river has been polluted, due to a lot of sand mining, pollution from upstream, and also from the oil palm plantation. And when I was doing the book Met With, she actually shared me a song which is Lagu Riau Radu, which is about planting paddy. So she said that Riau Radu is how the sound of the paddy, how it sounds like when the wind blows and when the paddy moves, and then that's the sound of the paddy. And within this song itself, you can know how they treated paddy. So you can see she sings about semangat padi, which is very similar to the semai as well. And also within the song itself, this is another page, but I didn't put the presentation, how they would know it's time to go back home based on the singing of the gibbon or siamang. And then even with the rice, they have a lot of stories on how they should care for the rice. So they actually refer to the rice grains as orang, which translates to people. So they see rice as an equal status to them, and that they believe that every grain has a spirit in it, which is the semangat padi. So then they shared with me, on the day of the harvest, every container in the house must be filled with water. So they would also come home from the fields, filled with rice as well. So it was such a nice story to hear. And then when they carry their back basket full of rice, they cannot complain that, oh, it's so heavy, because they view the rice as a human, right? So it's like carrying your own child, your own baby. So you shouldn't complain. And it's also because of harvest. And then she also said that the song Lagu Riau Radu is a harvest song which sings about how rice field has turned to a ripe gold, and that we are thankful for the bountiful harvest. And this is a very short sharing on the Temuan people, which also shows how they imbue care when they deal with food. And the Temia Kelantan, who are the Temias? So the Temia, they are mostly known for their dream practices. There are lots of books that have been written about the Temias, which looks at how dreaming plays a very integral role in their belief system, in their spirituality. And they were traditionally semi-nomadic, who are hunter-gatherers who also plant like, bananas, ubi, cassava, or so on and so forth. Very similar to the Semai, except that the Temia, they live way more inland compared to the Semai. And they are mostly living in Perak, very north of Perak, and then in Kelantan as well. So I was in a village in Kelantan. It was early last year, early 2022. It was 700 meters above sea level. It was like one of the furthest villages that I've traveled to, with a researcher from University of Malaya. And it was very interesting because to listen on how the creation myth of their story, so of their food. So there is a story about what they call ruai chana. So ruai translates to soul, and chana means food, so soul of the food. And it's a creation myth on how first food came to be for the Temia people. So it roughly went like this. So the story is, it goes like this. Once upon a time, there was nothing on this earth. So it was only darkness. And there were two brothers, Along and Aluich. So note here that they have also a similar mythological figure, Aluich, same like the Semai as well, with this Bahluich. So these two brothers, Along and Aluich, wandered to the empty landscape, and they were very hungry. And then one night, Aluich had a dream where he was told to split his human body for food. And then the following day, he told his brother about the dream and asked Along, his brother, to split his body. But his brother was like, no, I don't want to do it. But eventually he listened to Aluich desire to split his body so he can give food to the human world. And then when Along split Aluich's body into half, and then from inside his brother's body, his brother's heart became the heart of the banana tree. And then the rest of his body parts became corn, cassava, which is ubi, and millet, which is also called as sekoy or jawa in Temia language. So these four food plants, which is banana, corn, cassava, and millet, are considered sacred and ancestral to the Temia. Every year, they must plant these four plants. And then after a long time, hill paddy and other plants started to grow around these plants. So then in this story, his brother actually came back to life. And Along was very surprised. But the idea that his brother came back to life shows that, I mean, it's very symbolic to a sign that our food and our forest growth and the living things on this earth are actually gifts from the guardian spirit. And this, in this picture here, you can see, so the millet, this is a dried millet which they hang like upside down in the house, and then they would have to pound the millet as well, and then process it, and then cook it inside bulo, and then it becomes like this. It's very nice. It's like, it's almost like quinoa, like that, quinoa food that everyone pays so expensive to eat. But these are all like food that is native to Malaysia, which I think could be, it could be introduced in our everyday food as well. Okay, so this is a very nice transition into how they believe that the heart is the heart of the banana tree. And there is a similar story within the Ma Mary as well. So I think Ma Mary is one of the most well-known tribes in Peninsular Malaysia. They are coastal people who lives mainly in Selangor. So they are with the tribe that I work with, the group that I work with, they live on Pulau Keri. So they are traditionally fishermen, and a long time ago, before they settle permanently in houses on land, they used to also live on boats, almost very similar to the sea people. They live on boats. They would travel for weeks on boats just to catch fish, crabs, so on and so forth. They also have a tradition of planting rice, but they don't practice it anymore because their ancestral land has been turned into a golf course. So if you have been to Pulau Keri and you drove by a golf course, there used to be all paddy fields before it was a golf course. So because it doesn't exist anymore, when we were doing this book with the Ma Mary, which is their animal folklore book, and they talk about pounding rice, we had to ask them to sketch out how it looked like, because you can't find it anymore in the village. They don't make it anymore. So then this is actually the female version of the one that you see on the left side of the screen, a female version of the the rice pounder, you know, to pound the rice. So the male version is actually like the opposite side, where the top is like is there the corner side at the top. And because similar like the Semai, the Temia, and the Temuans, rice also play a very significant role in their rituals and ancestral practices as well. So every year they will celebrate Hari Moyang, which translates to Ancestral Day, and it's when they actually pay respect and say thanks to the ancestors for a year of using resources from the land. It's basically to say thanks, and then to also ask for blessings for the year to come. And rice, they would actually make very small size ketupat, which is mini ketupat. So it's not like the ketupat that you're used to, right? Which is about this size. This is like really, really very small. And they call it ketupat moyang, which translates to ancestors ketupat. And it's made from coconut leaves. So this mini version is made for the ancestors, and they must be tied in a bunch of 7. So if you count, there are 7 here. I think there's 7 here. And this is because the Ma Mary believes that there are 7 layers of the earth. So each ketupat is for the different layers of earth. So they believe that we are on the 6th layer, there is the 7th layer on the top, and then below are the other 5 layers. So each ketupat is for each layers, and then the ketupat must be filled with rice, or they believe that they will have nothing to eat if they don't do it. So interestingly, I thought that they only put in rice for during the Ancestors Day. When I requested they make ketupat moyang for an exhibition we just did in Chiang Mai, Thailand, they also put in rice. And I asked, like, oh, why do you have to do that? And they say that it's because it's memang it's their custom, it's their adat to actually always have rice inside their ketupat moyang, because if they do not, they believe that there will not be rice for in the future. So they will actually do decoration, it's not decoration, it's actually offering bowls for the ancestors. So underneath this this leaf, there's actually rice as well, which is glutinous rice. And then they would make flowers, and then they will offer it on the panga that I showed you earlier, which is an altar. And they have a story of how the human soul comes from the anak pisang, which is the child of the banana tree. So like you banana, how they reproduce is that the anak pisang would grow beside the mom, right? The mother of the banana tree. So the storyteller told me that when you cut the fruit, and then the mother tree would die, but there will always be an anak pisang, which is the child of the banana tree, that would live on. So this is very symbolic to how, when like you do not live forever. So the mother tree bear fruit which can be eaten by us, and then she passed on, but then she leaves behind a child. So it's very symbolic to the continuity of life. Nothing lasts forever, but also always thinking for the next generation. Which I hope that, in the last few slides, the other tribes that I've talked about, you can start seeing a pattern or a structure on how everything that they do is always thinking on, or is always in respect to who has come before them, but also who is coming after them. Yeah. So to conclude, we circle back to the question, what role does folklore play in Orang Asli Foodways? So you can see that in everything that they do, they always have a story that surrounds it, which requires a person to have respect in what they put into the land, because the land will feed them in return. So in this picture, she's washing the bamboo shoot. Even bamboo shoot and bamboos have their own folklore and taboos surround it. And this shows how they are very close to the land and the various spirits or beings that are living in the area, because they believe that when we take care of the land takes care of us, and the land is a gift that keeps giving, and if taken care of, it will always be there to provide for us. And the key word here is care. It's not to exploit, but to respect and maintain for generations to come. So I think one very interesting way of seeing this is how, to the Orang Asli, most Orang Asli, a durian tree is considered it's like a historical object to the Orang Asli, because a tree that was planted 100 or 200 years ago is still giving fruit. So imagine 100 years ago, maybe their grandfather or the great-grandfather planted the tree, thinking that I know this tree will always give fruit to my generations to come. And therefore, to look after our land and therefore our foodways is very important now than ever, because of how the climate is changing, how we have declining food security and a lot of ecological loss. So then it goes back to how we should also practice a cosmology of care, when we are dealing with food. So I always like to close with this picture here of bamboo shoots, because the Orang Asli believe that one day when there are no more bamboo on this earth, it's a sign that the earth is already very sick and dying. So for me, bamboo shoot is very symbolic to growth and caring for the planet. Yes, thank you very much. That's the end of my sharing session.
Thank you so much, Miss Wendy, for the meaningful and discerning discussion just now. And it is very, very interesting, because especially the part that you said that when we take care of the lands take care of us, and how the Orang Asli really appreciate every single grains of the rice grain, because it have its own spirit and message. And now we open to the Q&A session from the floor. So we have one question here by Anis Afifi. She said, Hi, Miss Wendy's. Yeah. Thank you for the insightful discussion. I have a question. To what extent does modernity affect Orang Asli's sacred relationship with the food? Do they still possess similar sense of care to food and nature?
Thanks, Anis and Bibi for the question. I think that the modernity or urbanization, I think it doesn't change too much, because in my sharing just now, I showed the for example, like the Ma Mary, they are very close to, means they are just 1 hour away from KL, and they have a lot of the environment has changed. And then with the Semai, they still live very close to the forest and is very far from the city. But as long as there are still people that are like the penjaga adat, or the people who look after their customs and their traditions, are still present, they are still quite aware of all of this, like their relationship to the land and with the food, because there will always be an elder there telling them like, this is not how you should do things. But also there is that danger, because only the elders possess this sensitivity. So if they pass on and the younger ones do not like follow in their path, then there is that risk of losing it. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the answer. And do we have any more questions from the audience?
Hi, Miss Wendy.
Hi.
I I have one question. I think more or less it's not the same as the previous question, but it's more about like what you said about the younger generation.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to know that how would you encourage people, you know, outside of the indigenous community like me to be interested or educated, especially I think the indigenous people has a lot to offer on their elaborated practices and belief of food and food waste. So how would you, you know, like encourage us to like be more educated and be you know, about all these stories and all these folklores, because as you said, they don't have a written language, right? So how would you know,
Mm. That's so hard to answer because I I mean, even for me, if I didn't start my collective, I would not even come across these stories. I mean, we all know stories from from Aesop's fables like Rapunzel and all that, even more than our own stories that is from our backyard. I think that um I think there are more initiatives like your your event today is so important, so that there is this platform for students to listen or for the public to listen. And also I guess in everything that we do, whether you come from any industry, like different industries, are whether you are in the corporate or whether you're in an NGO, so on and so forth. I think that in every um action that you take that is talking about the land or with natural resources, I think it's always very important to ask or to actually refer back to indigenous knowledge, or not even indigenous, or any locals that have been living in the area for a very long time, to actually listen to their point of views. Yeah. I hope I answer your
Thank you. Thank you for the question and answer. And we can open to one more last question.
Okay, hello, Miss Ya. Just an observation. I'm sure there's a question in there somewhere, but let me just like talk this out, because you mentioned about what happened to the ancestral land of the Mameri people in Selangor, and I am reminded of what's happening with the land for the Orang Asli in Gomusang as well. Right, so there's a lot of land clearing and so forth, and it affects the water. Water sources are polluted and so forth. I'm just wondering, where do we go from in the next 5 to 10 years to protect the rights of the various Orang Asli communities in Malaysia? What has been done and what can be done in a better way to help them?
So like it gets very hard, because how we govern our land depends on the state. So every state has different ways of dealing with the land, and the federal government, most of the time, it's very difficult for them to interfere because it's state matters. But in the case of the Orang Asli, the Nias in Gomusang or in Kelantan, which the one that they are fighting very hard now is against the what's that, the Empangan, the huge dam that is going to drown. So the village that you saw, and the one that I showed earlier, that is 700 meters above sea level, yeah, it's going to be an island if they build the dam. So imagine all of the things that will come. But I think like the first thing that's why with Gurimis we're also advocating very actively, is to actually recognize their ancestral areas. I mean, they live in a very huge area, and if once it's recognized, and actually how to govern the land will be decided by the Orang Asli themselves, then that is a way to move forward. Otherwise, it's very hard to talk about anything, even with my initiative to document their arts and culture. There is almost like it's almost very hard to do if they do not have access to the forest. So if they lose all their forest, they lose all of their culture. Even like the Mameri, they are very strong advocates of their culture. Like they do all of these like decorations on their costumes and all. But if they lose access to the natural resource, which is the Nepal palm, then it's impossible for them to make that anymore. So yeah, I think like the first step is always to recognize their land, their ancestral lands. And I saw that Anis has a question. Is there any food plant that is often inculcated in Orang Asli other than paddy rice? I think it's like bamboo, ubi, corn like jagung, which are present in some of the stories because these are all like, it's like their traditional food that they eat. So that's as far as I have come across it.
Okay, thank you, Miss Ringisia. We have unfortunately we have time restriction, so we need to thank you so much for this very insightful discussion that we have today about Orang Asli, and I think personally we need more of this kind of exposure in the future. So thank you. And for the next session, I will pass to Sister Shifa to
Thank you
continue.
very much, Bibi Balkis and also Miss Wendy. Okay, for our next session, we will have a session with Miss Farah Liana. A little bit on Miss Farah. Farah Liana is an author and artist based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. She is an English literature graduate who has written several short pieces under a pseudonym for various small international publications, primarily on folklore and surrealism. She has also recently published 2 books this year, which are a storybook series entitled To Be Human and an illustrated science fiction novel trilogy, Be Kind Rewind. Farah is also the founder of Mythology Resources, a local art and publishing house, and is the main book curator for Mythology's book club. Today, she will bring her discussion of magic and a bit of horror, a food lore. Please welcome Miss Farah Liana. Please welcome Miss Farah Liana.
Sorry,
Do
Miss
we
Shifa.
have Miss Farah
Miss
online?
Miss Shifa. Sorry, I just want to ask. Is because Dr. Fali is supposed to be presenting now, right? Is Dr. Fali having any technical issues? And is Miss Farah here? Because the slot is supposed to be at 3:10. Can we get some help for Dr. Fadli?
Anyone contacting Dr. Fadli?
I think let's give them a few minutes. If they're not in, what we can do is maybe we can push the last presentation to be the one taking place right now. Would that be fine?
Do we have Mr. Jose here? I think this one is a discussion on Squid Game series, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I think many are looking forward for the discussion.
Okay, let's just give Dr. Fali a few more minutes, yeah?
Mm-mm.
If not, we can move on to Farah. Farah, because Farah is, I assume Farah is already in the session. Okay, if Farah is in the session, we'll move on with Farah first, and then Mr. Clotario, and then when Dr. Fadli is ready, then he'll have the last slot. Would that be
I think
fine?
Farah is here.
Okay.
Can we see Farah?
Okay, I think Farah is here, right? So Farah, I have given you co-host privileges, so you can start presenting now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Farah.
Hi,
Hello,
Farah.
Hi.
family.
Because I just turned on the. Oh, what happened to the speaker before?
Now we can hear you, and I also can see you.
Okay, let me just. I set up, but I was ready for the 3:10 session.
Oh, Dr. Fadli is here as well.
Oh, okay. I'll close mine.
So how should we do this? Dr. Mehdi, you're on mute.
Then we'll go with Dr. Fadli first. I'm sorry, Farah. Since Dr. Fadli just came in, let me just assign him as co-host as well.
All right.
Okay. Sorry,
Okay.
Farah.
No worries, miss.
Thank you. Salam, Dr. Fadli, are you there?
Yes, sorry, I'm really sorry.
All right, okay.
Sorry, I just
Okay.
finished another program.
Okay, let me just give a little bit of introduction on Dr. Fadli. Dr. Muhammad Fadli Shah bin Khaizir obtained his PhD from the School of Language Studies and Linguistics, Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities in the respectable University Kebangsaan Malaysia. His area of expertise includes psychogeography, place attachment, and literature. And today, he will be presenting on his area of expertise of food and place attachment in selected poem in Malachin Testament Malaysia poems. Dr. Shali, please welcome.
All right, Assalamualaikum. Good afternoon. Okay, first and foremost, I'm really sorry for my late appearance. Sorry to Farah also. Okay, first and foremost, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really sorry because today I have back-to-back conference. And I was thinking my slot is at 3 something. So I guess I overlooked that one. And okay, hold on. Let me just share my slides. Is that all right? Okay. Hold on. Stop share. Hold on. Share screen. Where is my? Hold on. Google Chrome. Okay, can everybody see my what am I showing? Canva, is it?
We
Yes,
can
I
see
can
just
see.
Canva.
Canva
Okay. This
homepage.
is okay. Hold on. This is just to show that I've been working on my slides. Hold on. Let me just. Okay. Okay. Can you see the slides, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on. Just present it. Okay. All right. Everyone can see the slides. Okay.
Yes.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. All right. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, thank you once again for inviting me for this session. I'll try to make it a bit short since I've already delayed so many minutes. Okay. My name is Dr. Muhammad Fadli Shah from UKM. So today I'll be presenting about my paper. It is a ongoing project actually that I am actually working on. So my expertise is looking at psychogeography, how the environment is affecting our behavior and also our mind. So one of the element of our surrounding is food. And because my background is also in literature, so my forte is looking at poems. So for this sharing, I'll be looking at the poems in the collection of Malachin Testament, the Malaysian poems. All right, so these poems is a collection of around 50 poets and also poems that talks about a lot of things. So for my presentation today, we'll be looking at some of the selected poems that actually talks about the city and also about food. Okay, all right, hold on. All right, so basically, the intention of my paper is actually to look at the use of food. Okay, some might question me why I actually look at poems and also food, whereas that the focus of this today's event is talking more about folklore. But I believe that the power or the symbol of food actually has that potential to be a part of the folklore culture. And I believe that if a story has a good message or good content, we will be sharing it to our friends and families, and then it goes down and down. So in a way, it acts as a folklore, a collection of stories by a group of people that we tend to share over time. And I believe that the poems that I'll be sharing today actually has that capacity of making it a meaningful message or content. All right. So basically, my introduction is I've selected the poems based on the city, because I was looking at how the city, in this case Kuala Lumpur, has a lot of things to offer. So in my readings, there are selected poems that actually uses food as part of their content. So the interesting part is that the description of food is not described in terms of their flavor, but the position of it. So how does the poet actually position the food in their narrative to actually tells more than just the story about the food? So looking at the lens of literature, we tend to understand more than what is being written in poems. So through my analysis, I find that actually there are a lot of things that we can look at food. And during my exploration of reading poems and also looking at the cities and what they have to offer, I tend to understand why we are very passionate or we are very sensitive when it comes to food. Because food is not just something that makes us full, it's not only that makes us feel satisfied, but actually it has more than that. So I would like to actually advocate that food is something that actually has a bigger message to us. So I hope that my sharing today through the poems can actually at least redefine the purpose or the symbol of food. Okay, and I think it is actually what do you call it? A necessity for us to actually revisit the purpose of food, because especially when we look nowadays, the landscape has changed. All right, I understand that the book or the poem was written in 1997, 2000, early 2000, and if you compare it in today's context, food is something that is on the go. All right, we tend to depend a lot on food delivery, Food Panda, Grab, and all that. So I think most of us tend to oversee or overlook the importance of food as a cultural representation. All right. So I think by rereading the poem, some poems I've been reading it during my degree years, which I have revisited. So I think looking at a different landscape or a different perspective enables me to find a more meaningful outcome. So I think it is important in today's rapid movement of things that we are, chasing our dreams. We are constantly working. There is a time in our life that we stop for a while, and then we just look what's around us and try to re-experience it to create more meaningful memories. So based on my readings of my paper, I believe that the food as a symbol has always been focused or studied in previous research. And I think having said that, I think that my readings have a good basis of me to continue reading and also to analyze food as not just a menu, as a form of menu or part of menu, but I think food has the ability to actually change people and also represent a bigger landscape than on table. So based on my readings, I think I see that some foods are being used as identity, some food are being used as fashion, some food are being manipulated in a way that attract attention. So I think the flexibility of food actually tells us a lot about how food is perceived as. So looking at my selected poems that I have chosen, I've chosen 4 actually. There are a lot, but I think these 4 are very interesting to actually share with everyone today. So I've chosen Fan Yu Tang's Kuala Lumpur, CPQ Bak Kut Teh at Pudu Market. And then my late supervisor, Prof. Gulam, the Midnight Satay vendor, and Malakai's One Christmas Morning. So if you have read this poem, or if you will be reading it later, you tend to see that at the first reading, there's not much about how food is described, because I think most of us tend to expect that the poems will be talking about how good is the fish, how tasty is the vegetables, or the way that it's presented. But I think looking at this poem, you tend to see that the food is not being represented as the central content, but upon reading, you tend to understand that there is some power in this food, which I want everybody to actually acknowledge. All right, so we will look at the first poem, which is Kuala Lumpur, Kuala Lumpur. This one is a very long poem, actually, but actually it describes the city of Kuala Lumpur as an urban city. However, in the second stanza, you tend to see that the poet has actually listed the names of the food. Now, what is interesting is that for an author, for the poet Fan Yu Teng, he actually lists down all the food that are available in Kuala Lumpur according to his understanding and his choice. And then the other thing is that he listed down nasi lemak in Gombak, roast duck in Pudu, mutton curry in Brickfield, bak kut teh in Kepong, nasi biryani in Kampung Baru, and sugarcane water at Cheras. Okay, I think what makes it more important is that how he actually uses or plays the word. So in this case, if you read, he doesn't say that when you go to Gombak, there is nasi lemak. When you go to Kepong, don't forget to eat bak kut teh. All right, so if you read and you understand it from a psychogeographical lens, you tend to see that this person actually named the person according to the food first. All right, so he says that your mutton curry at Brickfield. So here it says that the place or the name of the setting comes second. All right, so I think in a way for you to acknowledge that, you must have a strong attachment to the food, which makes you identify a place by the food first. So I think that's interesting because, for example, if nasi lemak in Gombak, if you ask me as a former or alumni of UIA, I tend to think about Malinja. Malinja nasi lemak. I think that's the best nasi lemak ever. Now I don't eat it because it's far away. But I always associate that. I mean, like whenever people say that, where can you get the best nasi lemak? I tend to say, oh, nasi lemak, Gombak. I always associate the food first, then the place. All right. So I think when you say that, it's not you're not actually identifying a place with a name, but with the food first. So I think when you talk about food, is something near to us, right? So when you tend to put food first, then only the name of the place, it shows how much close you are to that certain product. And in this case, it's a food. And I think that he acknowledges that there are other things that actually can be identified or associated with food. For example, like nasi biryani, sugarcane water. There must be a reason why people would state that first. So in my understanding or my reading, I believe that when a person put that first, it means that it means a lot to that person. So I think maybe some of you might share similar view, but what's interesting about when it comes to food is very subjective. Okay, so some people might not agree. Some of you might say, I'm sorry, but mutton curry in Johor, for example, is better. Then that is okay because it's subjective. It's just that I am looking at it from an individual point of view. So before we go and debate on what's best out there, we have to acknowledge from our personal point of view. So I think the poet has actually indicated that in his poem by listing down the names of the food first, which represents a place or a geographical setting. So I think he wants people to know that it is nasi lemak first, where? In Gombak. All right. So I think when you go to Gombak, it makes us see Gombak as a nasi lemak representation. All right. So I think that that is the power of food, where you can actually not only to represent the food, but it is able to actually become an identity of a place. One story short. I have last time I had a roommate. He was Chinese, and then he was sick for 1 week. And I told him why was he sick, and then he said that he was homesick. Right, so because he lived in Sarawak, so I said, what can I do to make him feel better? And then he told me that he wanted to eat bak kut teh, and he wanted bak kut teh in Kepong only. So I think for him as a person, he associates bak kut teh in Kepong to be the most, I don't know, the nearest, closest to his mom's cooking. So what happened was my friends went and bought bak kut teh, and then he ate, and after 1 or 2 days, he was better. So I think that, sometimes the attachment that you grow towards the food is not only just towards the food, but the entire experience that comes together with the food. For my second findings is in the other poem, the second poem, which is Bak Kut Teh at Pudu Market. This one I think is very interesting because the poet has actually constructed the setting out of the concept of food. So if you read the poem Bak Kut Teh, hold on, Bak Kut Teh at Pudu Market, it talks about the setting or the scenario of the food. So I think some might argue saying that Bak Kut Teh is just another Bak Kut Teh. Bak Kut Teh is just another Chinese dish that you can get anywhere. But to some people, it is not just about the food, but the location of the food. It is about preparing the food. For example, the poet writes here, the waiter in sleeveless pagoda singlet prevails from table to table with a pot of Chinese tea, chilies, and garlic in their proper place. And then he talks about how the customer will come and eat. And then he said that next moment they have gone all but the empty bowls and bones so quickly as though in protest against the dawn that came too soon. So I think the scenario or the image comes together with the food. So I think some of us, we don't eat with only our mouth. We eat with our eyes, we eat with our other senses. So I think this poem actually tells you that to enjoy your food, you actually need to enjoy where you are at that current moment. So I think that, you know how some of us, when we go for nasi ayam, we tend to go for the Chinese Muslim, for example, because we believe that Chinese makes the best nasi ayam. But because I'm a Muslim, then I'll find Chinese Muslim, all right? But we have that kind of perception that when we want to go and eat something, we go by the authenticity of that food. Or for example, if you go and have nasi lemak, you tend to go to the stall. You tend to see who is the one that is selling the nasi lemak. You want to go and find the makcik or the old lady because you believe that when you have all these elements, it actually adds flavor to the food, all right? Or it adds meaningful experience when you are eating the food. Okay, so I think that is missing in today's world, where we tend to just eat for the sake of eating. We tend to forget that when you eat, you are indulging in certain stories of the one who is cooking. You are actually being part of the journey of how the food is starting at the very first point up until when you get your food and then you eat. Okay, so some people might say that we don't have time. We are too busy working. All right, eating is just another routine. But I think through this kind of poems or any other experience, it shows that everybody is able to actually go through a more meaningful experience when you start to realize all these things. Okay, and then the third poem is from Prof. Gulam, The Midnight Satay Vendor. Okay, this one, I think my first encounter with this poem was during a degree. That time I was just reading it for the sake of class assignment. But after revisiting it, I tend to look it from another point of view and see how important the food identity or culture, how it is reflected in the poem. So basically, if you read the Midnight Satay Vendor, it actually talks about how simple satay is as food. All right, it is a meat on a stick, but the story or the message behind it becomes something that is very, very important. All right, so in the poem, The Midnight Satay Vendor, the poet is actually comparing two different lifestyle. The one that is selling and then the one that is buying. All right, the one that is for example, here it says that how the production of the satay is made. All right, sometimes we don't see that, sometimes we overlook that. We come to the store, we tend to just buy the satay and then we go back. All right, but some people, when they go, they tend to observe. So I think there's no harm for us to actually like stop and then you tend to observe your surrounding, and I believe that it will create some message or some story to you. So I am at guilt because sometimes when I buy satay, I have no time to look at the people who who are fanning the fan. I have no time to look at how the person is preparing. But sometimes when I reflect again, then I tend to understand that everything has a purpose, everything has meaning. So I think this poem actually helps to upgrade the value, not only the food, but only the people who contribute towards it. So I think if you look at this poem, it says that, but life must not stop for the likes of him. So at pasar malam and along the night's inclines, wiping his migraines off his forehead, he returns to his embers, his children amidst their kurang ajar yawns. Prepare tomorrow's ketupat and cucumber. Satay, satay, satay. Okay, so it says here in this poem that the satay vendor goes to a high class household and sells satay. And then he goes to pasar malam, he also sells satay the same way. So I think that is something that is important to acknowledge, that food is accessible to everybody. All right. So I think even though some of you might say that satay is a street food, it belongs to the street, but it is also satay that are served in the business class and first class on the plane. So I think the importance of food is beyond the taste. It's beyond the appearance. It's more to that. So I think doing this project and also this paper actually allows me to appreciate more about the food and also the story behind it. Okay, and then the last one, it talks about One Christmas Morning. So this is from Malakai's poem. The interesting part here is that, or the lesson that we can learn here is that food, it represents identity and also culture, and it represents your root. At the same time, it shows us that we are free to actually celebrate or acknowledge other things in life. For example, here it talks about one Christmas morning. It talks about how the persona or the boy or the person wakes up and then celebrate Christmas. But the thing is, what is interesting in this poem, it says that the smell of curries and familiar kitchen sounds of Pati, Amma, and my sisters have awakened me. So that is interesting because on Christmas morning, people get up because they want to celebrate Christmas. They get up because they want to unwrap the presents. But for Malakai's poem, the persona wakes up because of the food. He wakes up because he smelled curries and also because of the sound of his mother, Pati, Amma, and also the sisters. So in this poem, the aspect of food in terms of the smell, the sound, and all that, it is given much respect. in this poem. So that's why some people might say that you have to respect your food, you have to take your food seriously. Maybe what these people meant is that the food is not just food. It comes together with your tradition, right? Because the smell of curries, to me, when I interpret this poem, it says that the smell of curries awakened me. It means that the power of your food is able to open up new perspective. It is able to actually put new view. All right, awaken me. This is a understatement, I believe. Not just you wake up from sleep, but also to give new insight. And another stanza, it says that the smells of curries and ghee rice waft through the house. Guests will arrive, but not yet. So I think for Christmas morning, people will actually look forward to other visitors coming, and then the what do you call it? The crowd, and then the companion at the house is what people look for. But I think in this poem, it puts food as the first choice or the first preference. So I think these kind of poems has actually elevated the position of food as something that is more than just what we eat. And I think I believe that there are other poems that actually have this kind of approach, but the purpose of me sharing this paper is just to show you that there are poems like this in the market or in your readings. It's just that sometimes we overlook because we tend to see food as just a dish, a food as just another form of feeding your hunger. But try to understand the purpose of why food is being included in poems. Because I believe that based on my analysis and all that, tradition food is an integral part of cultural identity. It also resembles Kuala Lumpur as a city, and also it is part of us. When I think again, I tend to think about how we are constantly fighting of which country has the best nasi lemak, which country serves the best mee curry or popiah and all that. Okay, if only everybody understands that food, it belongs to everybody. But what makes it different is the composition of it or the stories behind it. Okay, so for example, Malaysia's nasi lemak will always be served in, I don't know, banana leaf. And then it always have the hard boiled and also the telur goreng. Maybe in Indonesia, it doesn't have the telur goreng, doesn't have the peanuts and all that. So it is okay to have two nasi lemak, but as long as the two nasi lemak has their own stories. So in a way, we can actually enjoy the meal, and then we can actually know the story behind it. So I think if everybody understand that, we won't be fighting too much, because it will be never ending. Nasi lemak, popiah, chicken chop, rendang, and all that. But everybody should look beyond that. All right. So for example, if the rendang is not crispy, then that is their story. Our rendang is like this because it comes with our story. Okay. So at the same time, we can actually celebrate the differences, and at the same time, we can enjoy the wide variation of dishes that are available. Okay. So I think it is best, or this is just one advice that I think as a someone with literature background, and at the same time I love eating and exploring new dishes. Okay, so putting aside all these medical reasons, religious reasons and all that, when it comes to food, I think when I say eat with your fingers, mouth, nose, ears, and eyes, I am metaphorically speaking that try to enjoy your food. Try to have or try to put some thought when you are dealing with food. Because I think not that I am forcing people to do that, but I think, or I am guaranteeing everybody that it will become it will be a good experience. Okay, just when you eat by this at the store, by the street, just stop and think, oh, where are you now? What are you eating? how is it served to you? What are the sounds that you listen to? Okay, because I think it gives you it doesn't just feed your hunger, but it feeds your what do you call it? It feeds your other needs in life lah. All right, that's why you see people, they appreciate more people, other people, they tend to respect the seller, they tend to acknowledge the cook, because they understand that whatever that they are eating, it comes together with another story behind it. All right, so eat, feel, repeat, and hopefully you will have an amazing time indulging your food. All right, so I think I would try to finish off with the last slide here. Okay, this one is very controversial for me to actually use this. What you are, what you eat. All right, because I think many people put negative connotation towards it. All right, you are what you eat. Okay, so if you don't eat healthy food, then you are the epitome of unhealthy figure. All right, but I would like to take this into a what do you call it, and a literature context. All right, you are what you eat. It means that I would like to advocate that if we are Malaysians, we have to try and eat, or try to be comfortable with all the food that we have in Malaysia. All right, okay, for example, if we are Malaysians, then we have to eat nasi lemak. All right, I'm not asking people to eat nasi lemak every day, but we have to eat so that we are able to tell the story to other people around the world. Okay, and then because food is something that attached with identity, with culture, tradition, that's why we have to try and taste it, because by tasting it, we are tasting our culture, we are tasting our identity and all that. Okay, for example, my dad is Kelantanese, my mom is from Perak. So Perak is well known for tempoyak, durian paste. So I eat durian paste. As compared to my dad, I don't eat budu. Okay, so everybody says that you are Kelantanese, you should eat budu, but I don't eat. All right, so I don't feel that sense of attachment to Kelantan, my Kelantanese side, because I don't want to be part. I mean, I don't try to become part of their culture. So one of it is by eating budu. So I admit that. All right. So that's why sometimes when I go back for Raya, Kelantan there's a gap between me and my relatives or my cousins. And I believe that one of the reasons is because I don't eat budu. But when I go back to Perak, I think that I blend so well with the Perak side, my mom's side, because I think that when I eat, I am part of their culture. So sometimes we have to figure out that food actually attracts us to the culture, the stories, the tradition, the roots. All right. So the next time that you come across any kind of food, all right, if it's not, if you don't have any limitations such as religious reasonings or health, just try, because I think sometimes the act of you eating a food, it is not about you eating, but about you embracing and accepting that particular story. So I think that action is actually part of the folklore, or stories that actually tells a lot about a certain group of people. So the next time you see food, I hope that it fills your tummy. At the same time, it fills your knowledge, and also it enhances your experience. All right. So with that, I think that's all. Thank you so much for this opportunity to actually share about the poems, and also to have me on this session for today. All right. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you to Dr. Charlie for your research presentation just now. Very interesting and enlightening indeed, with very beautiful slides. Okay, we will now open the floor for Q&A session. Anyone who has question, you may raise the hand icon, or you can put up your question on the question box.
Okay, salam, Sister Shifa. I think I have not a comment or question for Dr. Fadli. All right, first thing is that, jokingly enough, Gombak is not known for nasi lemak anymore. It's known for lemang daun lerek now. But on a more serious note, I was just wondering, what made you want to look at, food and how it's represented in this collection of poetry? And are you planning to look at representations of food and landscape or space in other works, like fiction or plays and so forth, by Malaysian writers?
All right. Thank you, Dr. Madi. Okay, thank you for the new latest update about Gombak. Lemang. Okay. What made me okay, first of all, my research focus was more about the cityscape, and also the architectural landscape, especially how it's being represented in poems or any fiction literary works. But as I was doing my research and also my project, I tend to see that behind every structural buildings in the city, there's always a mention about coffee shop or about a stall. All right. So I believe that the construction of a urban landscape, one of the layers is or will always be about food. And then as I explore food, it goes it branch out to a more interesting areas. For example, you have the KLCC, and then behind it you have a stall where they serve nasi lemak. And then behind the story of the nasi lemak is a story of a lady who actually owns the stall, and that lady comes from another kampung. So it becomes very interesting to actually dig more and more about how food is positioned in the context of an urban landscape. And I believe that um, I am, because of that, I think I am more interested at looking the story behind about food. How, when we eat rice, what is the story from the first point of where the farmer actually plants the paddy and all that. So another project that I'm looking at right now is looking at the food in Sarawak society, because they have, I think, compared to KL, Sarawak's take on food has more SOP, or they have a lot of procedures and respect, which is in an important element in their food. For example, some food are meant only for a certain age group. There's certain food that actually can be cooked by a certain groups of people. So I think it takes me to a more, I don't know, a significant finding, because here in Malaysia, I mean in KL, we are only talking about how food is representing a certain race. For example, chapati, the Indian community, and then you have bak kut teh, the Chinese. But when you go over to Sabah, Sarawak, there's more than that. So I think maybe we can learn one or two from their experience of eating food and preparing food, which I think can be applied to all. So I think, yeah, that's how I start, and that's where I am currently going through my projects.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Charlie. Do we have any question? Should we check the chat box? One question, Dr. Fadli. Since you are what you eat, if you can represent yourself as a food, what would it be?
Oh my God. Okay. Didn't expect this, because I was saying you are what you eat. Now it's backfire to me. Okay. What I am what you eat. Okay, I
Maybe
think
tempoyak? I don't know.
okay, if I say I'm a tempoyak, then people will think that I smell like that, right? But maybe in the context, I think that I am what? Ayam gepuk eh? What's the ayam gepuk that you guys eat every day?
Yeah.
I think I am I'm pedas pedas. I'm very vocal, but at the same time people still want me. Okay, take it in a positive way lah. All right, but yeah, good question. Never thought of that. People asking me what I represent. Okay, yeah, ayam gepuk.
Okay. That's my favorite food as well, ayam gepuk.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any question? Any more question? I also would like to ask your opinion. This is just asking about opinion about localization of food. For example, if a food is called by their real, if a food is called by its real name in the place, but then when it was brought into foreign land, for example, and it was given another name, what is your opinion on that? Because there
Okay.
was a discussion in Twitter before this about Malay people calling Adirasam as Peneram. I mean, for me,
Oh,
it was
okay.
never an issue. But then when someone brought that up, so I was like, oh, maybe it is an issue.
Okay. I think there's a lot of sensitive parties that you have to actually take care of. But I believe that if a food goes to another country, it's just like translation of language. When you go to other countries, it's very hard for us to sustain the originality because the geographical setting has changed. All right, the ingredients have changed. You cannot get the exact change unless you bring all the kicap jalin and all that. But in most cases, it has transported to a new area. So from my side, I think that it will be selfish for us to maintain the name, all right, because it's no longer within our parameter. And at the same time, it's not fair for them also because it's already there. So, do like what the Romans, when you're in Roman, do like what the Romans. So I think if it's there, then you have to change the name because, if we maintain like nasi lemak in overseas also, of course, we are proud of it. But I think when it's there, we have to also respect the host, all right? Unless that person wants to change the name or maintain the name, that is preference. But I think we have to let go sometimes certain things in order for it to embark a new journey. Right, for example, right now, the latest project that I'm doing is that how we are naming our food in a very negative manner, if you realize that. All right, for example, we have sambal gila, and then we have nasi ganja, and then we have soup. Soup apa?
Macam sup merasuk
Soup merasuk and all that. Okay, but we are okay with it. All right. So my project is with this one ustad. There's this one ustad in my project team. So he is looking at how all this negative connotation does it affect our characteristic. All right. Because they believe that you are what you eat, right? So they have this fear that if you eat sambal gila, you eat it, do you become gila, things like that. All right, but we understand that it's just for marketing and also for the purpose of making it viral. But you have to understand that when you attach a name to something and then when you consume it, it becomes part of us, right? It becomes a part of our behavior, our way of thinking, right? So that's the current project that we are looking at because we have never thought about it, right? We just look at it as like sambal gila, but it serves a meaning. All right. So always, like our parents always say, right? Don't play with our food. Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Charlie. Due to time
Thank you.
constraint, I think we have to stop our session
Okay.
right here. Okay, I will now pass the floor to the next moderator, Sister Sharifah Liana, to continue with the next session.